I think that ultimately the issues around Caitlin Clark are not largely about officiating, and that particular incident is not about whether a foul should have been called at the time in the game or whether that was ultimately a flagrant on review. And I've come to know Caitlin really well. She's an incredible player and also an incredible person. And she wants to focus on being the best player she can. And she's become a bit of a political football in this country. And I think it's incredibly unfair to her. I don't think that issue is ultimately about officiating. It's sort of, it's become political ping pong with her. And she's a young woman who's trying to improve her game, right. Focus on being the best player as she can. And I don't even think it's fair to her that this has become a separate storyline about one foul should have been called at the time or should have been called a flagrant after the fact. And
what's up, Clark Nation? Have we seen a shift in the narrative? Have we seen the adults finally step into the room? For those of you who may not be aware, the owner's mouthpiece typically is the commissioner. We've been talking about where are the Simons? Why have the Simons been so silent on these issues? Why have they been watching move after move by this front office that is highly questionable at best? Justine Passat, letting her go, keeping people on this roster that should not, in my opinion, be on the team. You know who they are. There are a couple of them on that bench. And then the young lady that they did pick up, they didn't need her. They're not even playing her right now. She's getting pedestrian minutes. But back to Adam Silver, who has finally spoken out about this issue. Something that the W commissioner should have done, but failed to do. Let's hear what he has to say, because I think this is almost tantamount to a tectonic plate shift in the narrative. Why do I say that? In the wake of this conversation, of this dialogue, and we're going to hear from others, Chinea Gwumake and Stephen A. Smith on First Take, we're going to hear them weigh in as well about this. But since then, I want you all to look at what has happened. I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail because I don't want to spoil it for Clark Nation and Indiana Fever fans. I don't want to spoil it for you all. I'm hoping this is a shift in the narrative, not in terms of favorability for one player, not in terms of favorability for the player that lifts all boats. A rising tide lifts all boats. You're going to hear that in this speech that he gives, in this interview that he gives. The time has come for people to just recognize. It's not. Look, this is not about special treatment like Acho and these David Dennis. All these people want to allege. That's not what this is about. This is about recognizing who is pulling the boat. We're not asking you to not be competitive, not play competitively, not play with fire. We're just saying, referees, do your job. If it's illegal contact, call it. If it's a reckless closeout, call it. Does someone have to twist their ankle on a closeout for y'all to upgrade it to a flagrant one? Or should there be a space around the landing spot that if you enter that space, that's a flagrant one? No one should have to twist their ankle to prove that it was a flagrant one. And that's what it seems like one player has to do in some cases versus other players in this league. Let's listen further to the adults in the room.
One foul should have been called at the time or should have been called a flagrant after the fact. And that's my response, that it's fair. People have to think whatever they can, whatever they want about our league. But there's so much to celebrate about in the WNBA. I was part of the group that wrote the original business plan 30 years ago. I was part of the group that wrote the original business plan 30 years ago. And, where women's sports has come, we missed our numbers for many years in the WNBA. We missed our numbers for many years in the WNBA, but then it turned a corner. You're now seeing off-the-chart valuations of WNBA teams. Joe and Claire Asai have done an incredible job here in New York with the Liberty. Caitlin came along, brought an entirely new audience. Caitlin came along, brought an entirely new audience, and it began when she was still in college, to the game. Young girls, women, men, across the board, people who never had been paying attention to women's basketball. And then it became a rising tide. Because as we quickly all saw, it wasn't just Caitlin. There's enormous talent in this league. But as I said, yes, like, do we need to improve WNBA officiating? No doubt about it. Do we need to improve WNBA officiating? No doubt about it. But, my day job is getting complaints about NBA officiating.
What's your reaction to Adam Silver's comments on Caitlin?
I do believe that she has become a political football in some ways. People are utilizing her and what she represents and using it to advance their political agendas. People are utilizing her and what she represents and using it to advance their political agendas. Hey everybody, I'm sure you've seen the WNBA statement on the investigation. And I want to address this with the same energy I did the first time, because if you really know me, I always try my absolute best to uplift the WNBA, to celebrate the amazing players, the coaches, and of course the fans. That is something that is at the core of everything that I do. But if you know me, you know I'm not afraid to say I can do better. I am sorry that my message was in the heat of the moment. Because when I initially spoke on the topic, it really came from a place of care. It was based on firsthand conversations with people very close to the situation. Who raised real concerns, and they told me what they had experienced. And I felt like it was important and it was necessary to acknowledge those allegations. And also voice those experiences. And when you think about the WNBA overall, I always tell people with great growth comes growing pains. And the biggest pain right now is actually the officiating. You've heard multiple coaches on different teams. You've heard different players saying that there's a lack of consistency when it comes to officiating. Now, Caitlin Clark, when it comes to her specifically, she is a phenomenal player. And you know what's so frustrating? It's the fact that we are in the midst of the 30th anniversary season of the WNBA. We have so many beautiful storylines, what the Golden State Valkyries are doing, what Asia Wilson continues to do. I mean, the list goes on and on. Have y'all seen Paige Beckers play in Dallas? There's so many beautiful storylines, Caitlin included. She's going to demolish the record when it comes to 20-point, 10 assists games. She's already done that, and she's just like a few years into the league. Those should be the stories. Those should be the headlines. Instead, the highlights are the fouls or even her reaction. And to me, I think the most frustrating part, even though Kathy Engelbert has been a great commissioner,
of all people, talking about Caitlin Clark. And this is why I say, has there been a shift in the narrative? We all know Chinea Ogwumike and how she weighed in on the alleged comment that was alleged in Gainbridge Arena in the 2025 season. The first game of the season where the Chicago Sky was getting their hat brought to them. And during the midst of that game, the fiasco broke out. Angel Reese flopped, and she acted like she was shot out of a cannon when Caitlin Clark allegedly pushed her or threw her to the ground. Can you imagine that? I don't even want to show the replay again, but the way she acted like Clark slung her to the ground. Think about that. And they upgraded that to a flagrant one. But that's neither here nor there at this point. My point I want to make out here is look at the way they're talking about Clark now. I hope it changes for the better, for the betterment of the entire league, not just one player. But I hope it changes for the betterment of the league within itself. You heard the commissioner, not a commissioner, the commissioner, talking about how they didn't hit their numbers for many, many years, for decades, to be blunt. They didn't hit it. He says now the valuations are off the charts. Now, he's careful about how he says that. But we all know it's not a secret. Why can't others get on board with this? Why are people so, I don't want to say afraid, but why are they apprehensive about speaking out and speaking plainly? No one else has a problem about speaking out and speaking plainly on this issue, on Clark. Now you're going to see this all-star break coming up and the narrative that they're trying to shift this to about online hate. Get off of social media. Online is the wild, wild west. Yes, they have community guidelines, but can they outlaw everything? I mean, that they talk about violence. I've seen some pretty violent looking stuff. I don't know how they allow it, but it is what it is. If you can't take the comments that you're getting on social media, I could see if someone was walking up to you and saying these things. But on social media, are you serious? You're going to try to control the narrative on social media? That's censorship. That's censorship. Now, people shouldn't take personal shots at you in terms of what you and how you live personally. No, I don't believe in that. I don't condone that. But if they're talking strictly about your game, that's open season. That's fair game. If you're not hitting layups, yeah, you should hear about that. That's just point blank. If you're not, doing something on the floor, not off the floor, what you do off the floor is your business. I don't get into the off the floor in issue. I never get into that. I keep it strictly game, like you all should. Get off of social media, get in the gym and work on your game, because some of you aren't as good as you all think. That's all I have for you right now. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. You all have a blessed day. I'm out.